And we're back on Kawartha Lakes Matters, where we'll field questions to the Mayor from our Lindsay Advocate readers and viewers of your TV. Leanne asks, what is the city doing to ensure reliable high-speed internet service for all parts of Kawartha Lakes in view of the government's requirement for e-learning? Families in outlying areas are paying seriously high prices for inadequate service, and their children will be at a disadvantage should e-learning become mandatory. Has the Mayor raised this issue with the province? Is there a time frame to ensure we all have adequate high-speed internet?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have been working very hard with the province through the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus. I'm the chair of that this year, and we've been hammering away at the province to get funding for rural internet, high-speed internet. Cell gap funding is the first one. We did a program 4 or 5 years ago through the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus that brought that pipeline of better internet into the rural areas in all of Eastern Ontario. Then it's up to the private providers to take it to the different areas from there. Unfortunately, when you're in rural Ontario or rural anywhere, it's not very cost effective for a private company to run the backbone or the fiber and take it out to residences. So that's why we need to get the different levels of government involved. The municipality pitched in, Eastern Ontario municipalities put in $10 million, provincial government put in $71 million, the federal government put in $71 million, and right now we're just at the point where we're putting it out for tender. With the agreement to get the private providers to pitch in another $71 million on their part, and then to start paying their sort of third of the program to start running this backbone and this program across Eastern Ontario. So it's a big part of what we're doing right now is the cell gap. We're trying to mobile internet, mobile broadband. There's a lot of areas right now that don't have access to that cell gap in rural Ontario, so we should be able to close that gap considerably with the program we've got going. We've got approvals at every level, and then we're just starting to work on the next program, which is the actual high-speed internet, which would be the next level of bringing that backbone fiber out to as many communities as we can. The problem with it becomes, honestly, the problem is it takes so long to get it done that by the time you get it done, you're further behind, you're as far behind as you were when you started. When they started with internet, there was no Netflix, there was none of these, video FaceTime and everything. That takes up a tremendous amount. E-learning, streaming. Yep. So, what was high speed 5 years ago is now turtle speed, and what we need to do is we need to get caught up at some point. So
is there a time frame?
It's a tremendous expense. This cell gap funding, the time frame, we should have it completed by 2025 in Eastern Ontario, so not necessarily just Kawartha Lakes, because we're doing it as a regional area. And then the next program for running the broadband is probably going to be another 5 years on top of that. But a lot of the private providers at the same time are also coming up with creative ways to tap into some of the different areas. So this is really just the backbone and getting it out to as many communities. And then it's the private companies that need to take it from there to the individual residences. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's a very, very costly to take it to that 50-10 or whatever that the federal government, 50 down, 10 up, or whatever their statistic is that the CRTC has said everybody should be entitled to. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to bring that across Canada to rural Ontario. So it's not going to happen overnight, but we're working on it, and we are pushing away at the province very hard.
Okay. Pat says many municipalities have declared a climate emergency. What is City of Kawartha Lakes doing to combat this emergency?
Well, we've got our healthy environment plan. I mean, we've got lots of our strategic plan touches on the environment. I mean, we recognize, like everybody else does, that the environment is a major issue moving forward. We feel very confidently that we're putting, through some of our recycling and some of our different programs that we talked about earlier on the show, we feel very confidently that we're putting some plans in place to actually make a difference and make this better. I mean, we just built a building at 68 Lindsay Street, our housing project with our office space that is basically a neutral carbon footprint. So it's generating as much revenue as it's producing. So, we feel we're implementing a lot of things that are going to make a big difference in the municipality. I'm not a big fan of declaring a climate emergency, to be honest with you. Emergencies are something that, you don't declare a climate emergency and then go home and continue on with business as usual. If you've got a real emergency, then what are you doing about it? I'm more in tune with what we're actually doing as a municipality, and I think we're on the right track, making some good changes moving forward. It's just words. Words don't mean anything if there's no action behind them.
Okay, well, let's jump to the next question. It's kind of related. Anne would like to know, to help ensure the health of our waterways, is the city looking into alternatives to road and sidewalk salts? Is salt brine being used to help reduce the amount of salt used?
It's not right now. We have a salt management plan that we've implemented as a municipality. We have minimum levels of service that we need to maintain the liability on our roads, and unfortunately salt right now is one of the better ways to do that. Brine is available. We've tested it in some areas. Some municipalities do use it, like Durham does, I believe, but it's very much more expensive than the salt. So we tried to use the minimum amount of salt possible on some of our roadways, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to balance that against the liability of ice on our roadways when people are trying to drive and be safe. So it's really just finding that balance. So I know people call me sometimes and say there's a lot of salt on our sidewalks, you know, but it's either too much salt, too little salt, somebody slips, freezes overnight. So we just have to be careful as we go forward, but we're on top of that.
Okay, we're going to slip in one more question before we go. Anne would also like to know, when water flushing is being done, is there a way to harness some of that water for use of our city-maintained gardens?
That's a good question. I've never really, I don't know how you would, you know, unless we had some tankers there or something to catch that water to flush it through. I mean, a lot of that water flows into our watershed, you know, so at the end of the day, whether it's in the river or whatever, it is being, you know, reused. That's where we get our water for drinking water from and for a lot of our gardening and stuff. So it doesn't really go anywhere except down into the ground. But, you know, utilizing it, it's really, the system has to be flushed to keep it clean. So great idea, though. Never really thought about it.